Hey everyone, this is A-Rod coming to you with another exciting episode of Canine Wizard TV presented by Olive Branch Canine. This is episode 4 of Project Lola. All this talk about loading clickers, charging clickers, and loading markers. Now it's time for us to get down to business and start shaping behavior. So in this episode, we're going to show you how to use food as an incentive and use that clicker to mark that behavior for conditioning and teaching the sit command. That's the first step coming out the gate with any puppy, even with an adolescent dog or an adult dog. If you're struggling to do that, I'm going to show you some basic steps with a 12-week-old puppy to get her to sit, and we're going to start shaping that behavior and getting her to do what we want her to do, using that food as a motivation. Stay tuned.
All right, everybody, before we get started, let's talk about our equipment and venue setup. So for your equipment, you're just going to need your treat pouch, your clicker. For your venue setup, just ensure you have a clean surface area where you're going to be treating on the ground and that there's not any rubbish on the ground that's going to distract your dog or get them away from what you're trying to do to get them to focus on you, to get as many exposures and encounters you can with your reward and marking that appropriate behavior. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started with our first exercises. All right, for exercise 1, I'm going to start with on my knees and getting her engaged and providing a smaller profile of myself to keep her interested. Sometimes when you hover over a dog, especially a very young puppy, they'll get a little bit intimidated if you're creating a shadow over the top of them, or if you're too tall for them to really get interested in engaging you. So I'll always start these exercises very, very low profile to the ground, and then luring with my hand. So moving on to exercise 2, what I would start doing here is after I get a high frequency of repetitions with just the gesture, the hand gesture, the motion of my hand, and then clicking and paying at the appropriate time, I start adding or pairing the sit command with the hand gesture and motion. Again, this will come into play later on as we elevate ourselves a little higher to a standing position. You'll want to maintain a consistency with that, but at this point, we're just pairing that and getting her used to the hand motion. And don't worry if your dog or puppy jumps up and tries to get the treat away from your hand. Control the outcome by just holding it there, extending away, changing your body positioning, and then getting her to refocus. Before we close this exercise out, I just want to highlight, if you can notice that I'm doing a variation between the toss away and then the reward at the target hand. The toss away aids in breaking her, releasing her from the position, and also allows me to get more frequency of repetitions by not having me doing a bunch of luring. She's just coming back and then repositioning. So let's go ahead and move on to exercise 3. So I'm going to change one environmental condition, and that is me moving from the kneeling to the standing. So what I like to do, and this is just a personal preference, if I add something that may be potentially dramatic within the environment, and for a puppy that is typically the case, I'd like to revert back to previous successful repetitions where the dog has had a high frequency of success. So I am going to take away the verbal command for these initial repetitions from the standing position and just use the hand gesture and hand positioning to get her to be successful. Again, continuing to mark the appropriate behavior with the clicker, showing her the right picture, and then paying her. I will eventually start delaying the reward. It'll be a click with a 1.5 second to 2 second delay, and then a distribution of the reward. All right, now we're going to move on to exercise 4, which is the final exercise for this episode. We're going to now pair the hand and verbal command of the sit. So I'm going to be crouching down a little bit still just to lower my profile and give her the best encounters possible. And what you will see for this final exercise as we get a high frequency of repetitions and success of me moving my body positioning around is I will start delaying the distribution of the reward. And I will actually also be holding my hand position to get her to focus a little bit longer and mitigate any effort for her to break position. Again, I typically wouldn't do this at the beginning, but at this point, she is very accustomed and she already understands the expectation of where my body is, what that hand position means, what the mark means with the clicker, and she is eagerly awaiting the distribution, the mark of the reward, and the release of the food, either at target hand or away from her. Again, you saw me there. Just hold the position just slightly a little bit longer. And then the release of the treat. For this little repetition here, we get a little bit of engagement, get her to follow my hand around a little bit more, and then click and then pay at my target hand. So again, at this point, she's had a high frequency of reward and success, and so we can start introducing smaller variables. As you can see here, I'm going to have her start driving into my hand, and I will not give her a kibble until I click, and then the kibble slides out of my hand and she gets it. So I'll hold about 4 or 5 pieces of kibble in my hand. So let's go ahead and close out this episode 4 of Canine Wizard TV presented by Olive Branch Canine. So to recap, the most important core component of these exercises you need to remember is click and pay. Click and pay. As you gain more proficiency and your dog gets more exposures and successful encounters, you're going to start noticing that your experience level is going to increase. You're going to stop thinking about it. It's going to become muscle memory, and then you can focus on some of those other components of the exercises that can kind of expand the development of your puppy, adolescent dog, or your adult dog. So don't get wrapped around the axle. Don't get super focused on my body positioning and those movements. I typically do that just to keep the young puppies engaged and stimulated with that body movement. So again, remember that click and pay. That's the most important fundamental component of this exercise, and you will be on your road to success. Thank you very much for tuning in to Canine Wizard TV and Project Lola.